Good evening, everyone. There are moments in life when you feel stuck, paralyzed, like no matter what you do, the outcome was already decided. Almost like the board of life was set up before you even made your first move. But I want to reframe that idea tonight, not from a place of fear, but from power. Ways about our decisions. Many people go through life with the unsettling feeling that they're not progressing, as if they're frozen in place while everything around them moves. This sensation, that you've never moved, that life just happened to you, is one of the most deceptive illusions the brain can create. From a neuroscience perspective, even in moments of apparent stillness, your brain is processing, reacting, and making micro-decisions based on deeply ingrained patterns. These patterns aren't random, they're the result of past experiences, learned behaviors, environmental influences, and repeated emotional responses that have wired your brain in specific ways. So, while you may feel motionless on the surface, you're actually moving continuously, internally. The problem is, most of that movement isn't conscious. You've built up an internal system that responds to life in predictable ways without needing your permission. This is why some people find themselves stuck in the same emotional loops, relationship patterns, or self-sabotaging behaviors, even when they desperately want change. It's not that they aren't trying. It's that their brain's default operating system is overriding their intentions. This is what it means when we say the board was already set about our decisions. The brain, in its effort to protect and conserve energy, leans heavily on past programming to decide how you respond today. So if you're not aware of that, it can feel like your life was predetermined. However, understanding that this invisible movement exists is powerful. It means you're not actually stagnant. Ways about our decisions. You've been moving all along, but the direction of that movement was shaped by things you didn't consciously choose. The key is to recognize that your inaction is not a lack of movement, but rather a lack of intentional movement. And that's where your power begins. Once you become aware that your thoughts, habits, and emotional patterns are silently guiding your life, you can start to influence them. You can interrupt those automatic loops and introduce new pathways in the brain. The feeling of being stuck starts to dissolve, not because the external situation changes right away, but because internally, the movement becomes conscious, neural decisions. You realize you've always been moving. But now, you're ready to choose the direction. The environment you live in plays a far more powerful role in shaping your behavior and mindset than most people realize. Your surroundings are not neutral. They are constantly sending cues to your brain that trigger specific patterns of thought, emotion, and action. Every detail, from the people you interact with to the layout of your space, acts as a signal that tells your brain how to operate. Over time, these signals become familiar, and your brain begins to automate its responses based on them. This automation is the brain's way of conserving energy and processing the world efficiently, but it also means your environment is quietly programming your future without you noticing. If you consistently surround yourself with negativity, chaos, or people who reinforce doubt and fear, your brain adapts to that as the norm. It begins to form expectations and responses that match that energy. Even your thoughts about yourself, what you believe you're capable of, are influenced by what your environment affirms or denies. This is how the chessboard of your life gets set. You didn't consciously choose every piece, but over time, what's around you begins to determine how you see yourself and what you think is possible. And once that board is set, it can feel like no matter how hard you try to move forward, you keep ending up in the same spot. This is why change is so difficult for people who remain in the same environment while trying to create a different life. The brain is constantly being triggered by old cues, reinforcing old behavior. But the moment you start to shift the signals, by changing your routine, setting boundaries, seeking out new influences, you start to change how your brain fires. You begin to see different options on the board that you didn't even know were there. Your perception of choice expands. Understanding this dynamic puts the responsibility and the power back in your hands. If your environment helps shape the setup, then changing it can reshape the future. Whether it's your social circle, your digital inputs, or your daily rituals, everything around you is either reinforcing your limitations or expanding your potential. The key is to take control of those inputs, because when you change your environment, you change the game. The human brain is not fixed. It is dynamic, adaptable, and constantly evolving based on what we repeatedly do, think, and feel. This adaptability is known as neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to rewire itself in response to experience. For a long time, it was believed that the brain stopped changing after a certain age, but modern neuroscience has proven otherwise. Every time you practice a new habit, think a new thought, or resist an old impulse, you're physically reshaping the neural circuits in your brain. This means that no matter how deeply ingrained a behavior or belief may feel, it can be changed with consistent effort and focus. Neuroplasticity works through a principle often described as, what fires together, wires together. If you've repeated a certain action or emotional response many times, the associated neurons in your brain have formed strong connections. These connections become the default pathways your brain uses to process similar situations in the future. So when someone feels stuck or trapped in a pattern, it's not because they're incapable of change. It's because their brain has become efficient at taking the same path. The good news is that by introducing new routines, thoughts, or emotional patterns, you can create new pathways and let the old ones weaken through lack of use. This is not just theoretical. It's observable in people who recover from trauma, overcome addiction, or completely change their mindset after years of self-doubt. In each of those cases, the change didn't happen all at once. It happened gradually through repeated effort and deliberate rewiring. The key is consistency. Just like learning a physical skill such as playing an instrument or lifting weights, reshaping your mental patterns requires repetition and patience. When people realize that they are not prisoners of their past wiring, it opens up a new sense of freedom. You are not fixed. You are fluid. You are capable of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Neuroplasticity is the scientific foundation behind hope. It proves that transformation isn't just inspirational talk, it's biologically real. By choosing to engage new thoughts, pursue new behaviors, and expose yourself to new experiences, you begin to rewrite the very architecture of your mind. And that's how you reclaim your power and reset the board in your favor. At the core of your brain lies a powerful command center known as the prefrontal cortex. This region is responsible for higher-order thinking, planning, decision-making, impulse control, and the ability to weigh long-term consequences over short-term gratification. Unlike other parts of the brain that react automatically based on survival instincts or emotional memory, the prefrontal cortex allows you to pause, reflect, and strategize. It is what gives you the capacity to break free from reactive patterns and choose a new direction. When you feel overwhelmed, trapped in old habits, or stuck in an emotional loop, it's this part of your brain that has the ability to step back and change the course. But the prefrontal cortex doesn't operate well under constant stress or distraction. When you're exhausted, emotionally flooded, or overstimulated, the more primitive parts of the brain take over, especially the limbic system and the amygdala. These areas are essential for quick responses and survival, but they're not designed for long-term planning or thoughtful decision-making. That's why, in high-stress moments, people often say or do things they later regret. They're not thinking with the part of the brain that understands consequences and goals. They're reacting, not leading. The ability to activate and strengthen the prefrontal cortex is what separates deliberate, intentional action from automatic, conditioned behavior. Through practices like focused breathing, mindfulness, journaling, and disciplined routines, you can enhance your capacity to think clearly and act with purpose. This isn't just philosophy, it's biological training. The more you engage the prefrontal cortex, the stronger it becomes, much like a muscle. And the stronger it gets, the more power you have to interrupt negative cycles, evaluate your choices, and set a new trajectory for your life. This part of your brain is your internal chess master. It sees more of the board. It considers the outcome several moves ahead. And most importantly, it gives you back the steering wheel and you feel like a passenger in your own life. Even when the setup feels like checkmate, the prefrontal cortex can help you identify the hidden play, the overlooked move, or the shift in strategy that changes everything. It's not just about thinking smarter. It's about reclaiming your authority over how you think at all. And that is where transformation truly begins. Change always begins with awareness. Before any transformation can take place, you first have to recognize the patterns you're living in. Many people feel trapped not because they lack the ability to grow, but because they're unaware of the systems and beliefs shaping their behavior. The brain thrives on familiarity. It prefers the known over the unknown because that's safer from a survival standpoint. So it quietly automates routines, reactions, and perceptions to conserve energy. But this same mechanism that helps you survive can also blind you to the fact that you're repeating the same cycle over and over again without questioning it. Becoming aware means stepping outside the automatic pilot mode. It means watching your thoughts instead of blindly believing them. It means noticing how certain environments trigger specific emotions or how particular people influence your self-esteem. This level of observation requires presence, and presence activates higher parts of the brain that aren't usually engaged during habitual behavior. Once you start noticing these patterns, why you get angry, why you procrastinate, why you avoid certain actions, you create space between stimulus and response. In that space is where change becomes possible. Awareness is like turning the lights on in a dark room. The furniture was always there, but now you can see it clearly. Once you understand what's really happening inside you, what drives your decisions, what fears are holding you back, what stories you're telling yourself, you begin to regain control. You no longer move based on unconscious programming. You move based on conscious intent. That shift, while subtle, is powerful. It's the difference between reacting to life and responding with purpose. The most profound transformations never begin with doing something new. They begin with seeing something old in a new way. Once awareness sets in, the same thought or emotion that used to dominate you can no longer run the show unchecked. About our decisions, you start asking better questions, challenging old assumptions, and exploring possibilities that were invisible before. Awareness doesn't guarantee change, but it creates the opening for it. Without it, you're just moving pieces on a board you haven't even looked at. With it, you see the whole layout, and from there, you can decide what move comes next. Not by chance, but by choice. Being the chosen one is not about destiny handing you a perfect life. It's about being given the weight of responsibility, the opportunity to rise when everything feels stacked against you. Many people being chosen means you're guaranteed victory or ease. But in truth, it means you've been called to carry more, see more, and overcome more. You weren't chosen because it would be easy. You were chosen because you have the potential to do what others would avoid. That potential, however, isn't automatic. It requires activation, and activation only comes when you realize you're not stuck. You're entrusted. When life feels like it has already cornered you, when every move feels predetermined, that's when the chosen one mindset is tested. Most people freeze in those moments. They believe the game is over, that there's no way out, and they surrender to what feels like fate. But those who rise, the ones who truly step into the identity of the chosen, don't see the board as the end. They see it as the beginning of a deeper challenge, a call to awaken their higher self. They understand that what looks like the end game may just be an invitation to flip the board entirely. Responsibility is the real burden of being chosen. It's the responsibility to remain conscious when others go numb, to keep moving when others quit, and to look inward when the outside world offers no answers. That kind of responsibility demands inner strength, clarity, and resilience. It requires you to accept that no one is coming to save you. Not because you're abandoned, but because you've been trusted to save yourself. That trust is sacred. It means you have everything you need inside you, even if it hasn't been fully awakened yet. The chosen one rewrites the narrative. They don't play by the old rules. They redefine what's possible, not just for themselves, but for everyone watching. They become the proof that transformation is real, not because they never struggled, but because they refuse to be defined by the struggle. So when it feels like you've never moved but the board is set against you, remember you're not here to follow the path, you're here to create it. Being chosen isn't about privilege, it's about purpose. And that purpose is waiting for you to fully claim it.